In May of 2009, Nike banned me from shopping at their stores. And just a few months later, in August, I was on a trip to New York City and I was inspired to build the ShoeZeum. So I went out to NYC to move my little sister out where she was starting college at NYU, and I had a day to kill. And I was cruising around and I decided that I was going to go to 21 Mercer, which is Nike Sportswear's flagship location. I'd never been there before and I was so excited to go and check it out. So I walk into the store and I had no idea, but Nike had just released the Air Maxim, which was an updated version of the Nike Air Max. And I walked into the store and the store was completely revamped to showcase the new Air Maxim 1 and to show off the new technology in this shoe. So I walk in, I check out all the artifacts, I actually ended up buying a hoodie, and I went about the rest of my day. And a couple hours later, a few blocks away, I stumbled upon the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Museum, and I decided to go and check it out. So I go in there, and the entire history of rock and roll has been curated right in front of me, with artifacts talking about the Beatles, Bruce Springsteen. It was amazing. And I left the museum, and I had a real light bulb go off for me. I thought, I can curate the history of Nike in a museum-like format, and I can do it better than anyone's ever done it before. So I went to work, and I decided that I was actually going to start with the Air Maxim 1 exhibit and just take it to the next level. And these are the shoes that were in the exhibit showcasing these in the ShoeZeum, and I want to walk you through them. So let's start here with the Air Max 1. This shoe was originally released in 1987, and it's the first Nike to feature visible air. So the exhibit in New York at 21 Mercer had a pair of retros just like these. This pair was from the History of Air pack that released in 2006. And I thought, you know, if you're going to showcase this shoe and you're going to tie it up to the Air Max 1, there should really be a pair of OG Air Max 1s from 1987 to look at. So here they are. Check out this beautiful pair of kicks, the very first pair of shoes to feature visible air. So the shoe was designed by Tinker Hatfield, and Tinker's inspiration for this shoe was the Georges Pompidou Center in France. And when Tinker sat down to design this pair of kicks, he said, when you sit down to design something, it should really be a culmination of everything you've ever seen and done in your life previous to that point. And that quote really struck me. And I figured when I'm building the ShoeZeum, it's going to be exactly that. A culmination of everything I've ever seen and done in my life previous to that point. So my love of Nikes, my love of collectability, my love of displaying my collectibles, it all came out in the ShoeZeum. So alongside the OG Air Max 1s, of course I had the original box. This is what the box looked like back in 1987. You really wouldn't know that nowadays because as Nike retros these shoes, they call them OGs. The most recent one was retroed in this box right here, which is actually a box much more reminiscent of the shoes from the 1970s. But this is the original Air Max box. And of course, right over here is the very first ad for the Nike Air Max from a magazine from 1987. When the Air Max first came out, it was released as part of a pack of shoes. It was the Nike Air Pack. The Air Max 1, the Air Trainer 1 was the second shoe that was released in the pack, and it's the first ever cross-training shoe. And then the third pair of shoes that were released in the pack was the Air Safaris, and this shoe's amazing. So I want to talk briefly about the cross trainer and then the Safari, and I want to bring all these shoes together for you in this exhibit. So going back to the Air Trainer 1, this was the first ever cross training shoe. It was also designed by Tinker Hatfield, and it was made famous on the tennis court by John McEnroe. About a year or two later, the cross training line was taken over by Bo Jackson, who was the big two-sport athlete, but McEnroe wore the cross trainers first. So Tinker went to the gym back in the day, and he noticed that people were lugging around a bunch of shoes with them. A different running shoe, a different basketball shoe, a different shoe to lift weights in. He thought this was crazy, and he designed the Air Trainer 1 as a shoe to be used for everything. Running, basketball, weight training, you name it, and this was the shoe. They're amazing. Original color right here, chlorophyll is what they call it. And then over here, the Air Safari, the third shoe from the pack. The Nike people like to say that this shoe bridged the gap for Nike between Nike shoes and brown shoes. Before this shoe, there weren't a whole lot of real cool and popular brown Nikes. When the Nike executives came and visited me at the ShoeZeum, Mark Parker looked at this shoe, he smiled real big, he picked it up, and he started touching the toe box and telling me that originally this shoe was made out of deer skin. And he was so excited about this shoe. Lo and behold, a year or two later, and it's been the year of the Safari. This colorway, and particularly this print, is the iconic Nike Safari pattern, and it's been all over a whole bunch of different shoes. We've seen tons of Safaris retroed in 2012. We also saw the Safari pattern on a pair of Griffeys most recently. They were on P-Rods. We've got a pair of foam posits coming out with the Safari print. It's almost like Mark Parker rediscovered this amazing pattern and colorway at the ShoeZeum. Now I want to transition from the Air Safari into the Air Max 1. And we're going to start here with the Keep Rippin' Stop Slippin' edition. It's an Air Max 1 patterned and modeled after the Air Safari. And the shoe is so dope. The details on it are amazing. Everything from this faux pony print to the Keep Rippin' Stop Slippin' back here on the heel. You got these cool extra laces. So this shoe, when it released in 2008, sold out pretty quickly. It's a quick strike. They're very popular and very hard to get their hands on. And let's transition even further from the Safari to the Air Max 1 using this pair of 2009 Carrot Safaris. So you know, of course, I had carrots on display in the ShoeZeum next to this shoe, and carrot is going to be the orange colorway on the toe box and the accents all over the shoes. You'll also notice red has been placed on this shoe, just like the original Air Max 1. As we transition from the Safari to the Air Max 1, there's really like a half and half of the Safari and the Air Max 1 on this cool pair of shoes. So also released in 2009, we got these Quick Strike Air Max 1s, and the Air Maxim 1 came out in 2009. So since they're sort of next to one another, let's have a look at the Air Maxim 1 and talk about the new technologies while we compare it over here to the Air Max 1, the 2009 Quick Strike. So the Air Maxim 1 is an updated version of the Air Max 1. It's more lightweight, more breathable, and it's got a lot of new technology packed in this shoe. The midsole and outsole are made of a more lightweight material, and the air unit is actually superior to the Air Max 1 air unit. So they're more cushy on your feet. They absorb more of a pounding. These shoes are amazing. Also, they're compatible with your iPod. At the time, in 2006 actually, Nike created Nike Plus technology where you could sync your shoes up with your iPod, and your iPod would tell you all about your run. And so here on this 2009 version, you can actually put a little chip in here and it'll communicate with your iPod and tell you everything that you're doing. These shoes also feature Flywire uppers. That's amazing. Flywire are these little cables that hold the upper of the shoe together. They're very strong and also very, very lightweight. And then the last upgrade on this shoe is going to be this Transpan mesh material. And it's sort of transparent and more breathable than the original mesh on the Air Max 1. Now, since this gets more transparent than the mesh, I decided that to round out the transparency spectrum, we should include a pair of Air Max 1 clots in the exhibit. When you look at the toe box here in the upper, you'll see that it's completely clear. This shoe is an NL edition, which stands for no liner. When you look right here at the padding or lack thereof, you can see that this shoe is just basically a shell of the Air Max 1, and it was a collaboration with Clot, an international retailer. About a couple weeks ago, Nike released a second edition of Clot Air Max 1s, and they were released online and also abroad. And I remember trying to figure out the time difference between California and Tokyo so that I could buy these shoes when they released at midnight. Of course, I ended up missing out. I couldn't figure it out, but I was lucky enough the next morning to wake up at 5 a.m. and score the tape pack on Twitter. Now, the shoes behind me are also a continuation of the Air Max 1, the Air Maxim 1. We have the OG pack, the engineered mesh, the Hyperfuse, which never was released in red, and then also the tape pack. So I wanted to continue to show the evolution and the innovation of the Air Max 1 even after all of these shoes came out. Let's continue. So we also have this pair of Air Safaris. In 2012, Nike released the Air Safari pack, which included the Air Safari and then the Air Trainer 1 in Safari Edition. So it really rounds out this exhibit where we have the Air Safari, the Air Max 1 dressed up like a Safari, another Safari, and then the Air Trainer 1 dressed up like a Safari. So this shoe came out the same day as the Air Trainer 1 and the same day as a pair of foam posits. And I was at Caesar's Palace, Nike Town, and there were like 100 kids lined up, and everyone was excited about the foam posits. I was excited about these and about the trainers. And when you looked through the window at the Nike store, they had a pile of foam posits. I think there were like 72 pairs, and then about 18 pairs of the trainer and 18 pair of the Safari. I actually bought one of each, and I love them, and my favorite ones are these. So anyway, this shoe is very similar to the 03 edition that we looked at earlier, except that the colorway is going to be a little bit different. But these are sick, and they sold out right away. The funny thing is the original ones that we talked about from 03 that Mark Parker fell in love with cost me $24.99 at a Nike outlet way back in the day. And then the last shoe that I want to look at right now, again, that Air Trainer 1, the first cross-training shoe, except this one is dressed up like an Air Safari. These shoes are absolutely amazing. I would expect to see a lot more Safari shoes coming out, and I hope that this was more of a comprehensive review of the evolution of the Air Max 1 into the Air Maxim 1 for you.